Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com. My apologies to those of you who joined us at the correct time for this thing. This was completely my fault. I apparently uploaded a chat. I was in a hurry before to get all this set up, and I apparently uploaded a chat as a webcam instead of a stream. And I didn't know they were two different things. And I don't understand how you can have a stream without a webcam, because one would seem to be non-existent without the other. Be that as it may, this was totally my fault. This was completely on me. I apologize. I hope I didn't just waste the most important 15 minutes of your Sunday night. I appreciate everybody being here for our fourth, and at this rate, final Sunday night goldenblack.com video chat session. So it's been a little bit of a day here. I've been busy, very busy. I didn't obviously didn't take the time to properly set up the chat session, have not really looked at the questions yet. So by all means, fire away over here. I know there's one topic everybody in particular wants to talk about. So I'll start off by talking about Hunter Dickinson and hopefully answering every question you can possibly have about Hunter Dickinson. He did visit Florida State this weekend, as we told you in advance of that visit. That was significant because Florida State has been a school he's wanted to visit before deciding. For what reason, can't really tell you for certain. I know Florida State's a good program. Florida State was the last of his offers among the schools that he's looking at. Florida State has had some good big guys. I can't remember them throwing the ball to any of those big guys. But obviously Tallahassee's Tallahassee, so draw from that what you will. I don't know what's going to happen now. I think, he's probably in a situation where he's taken. My understanding is that this might be his last official visit. He told people up front going into the fall that the schools he visited as a junior, he wasn't going to take return visits to. So then when you deduct those four schools, Providence, Louisville, Purdue, Notre Dame, from that list of seven, that left Florida State, Michigan, and North Carolina as the other three. He visited Michigan. He just visited Florida State. There's no reason to believe he's going to visit North Carolina. I don't think he's going to North Carolina. I think that's a non-starter for him. But I think he very well could be done with official visits now, in which case he can sit down and decide whenever he wants. I had some reason to believe last week that this could be a situation he visits Florida State and then immediately goes into decision-making mode, meaning starts to really think about what he's going to do and then ultimately make a decision whenever he's ready to do that. We told you on Thursday that everything we've heard about Purdue's chances are positive. Nobody here is telling you this kid is coming to Purdue. Please understand that. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to report positive information about Purdue basketball recruiting without people getting their hopes up and saying, I'm saying that this kid is coming to Purdue. I'm not. But everything I have been told, every piece of information I have gathered from all over the place has been very positive for Purdue. Even more significant is the fact that there really are no red flags here. There's really no hand grenade here. And sometimes there's a hand grenade that will blow the whole thing up for a place like Purdue. There's really no red flags here. Everything's positive. Purdue's done a really good job recruiting him for a very long period of time. He has really liked Purdue from the outset of all this. We say this about a lot of recruits, but I don't know if I've ever meant it as much as this. Purdue makes more sense than anybody on that list. Purdue has a demonstrated track record of playing in a way that would amplify all of the positives about Hunter Dickinson's game, and he understands that. As we said on Thursday in our report, the fact that he's likely to not even visit North Carolina tells you he's making a reasoned, rational decision and not an emotional one. Sometimes when guys get that blue blood offer, they're in there just because they're a blue blood. Or in North Carolina's case, I know he was a bit of a Carolina guy as a kid. That would be a difference maker in his recruitment. And really, that doesn't make all that much sense in the big picture when you're an ambitious kid who wants to go somewhere and play a lot and play well and then go to whatever comes after college as quickly as possible. So that's kind of, I think those are some indicators there that this is going to be the quote unquote business decision, the rational decision. The fit is really going to matter. Comfort's really going to matter. System is really going to matter. And if that stuff does matter, Purdue makes more sense than anybody. And all we can do here is read the tea leaves, so to speak. I'm not telling you that the kid's coming to Purdue. I'm telling you that, everything's positive about Purdue. I don't know how to word it other than to say Purdue's got a really good shot here. When I say they've got a really good shot here, I mean they've got a good chance. That doesn't mean he's coming to Purdue. And sometimes I don't know what to do, because sometimes fans get their hopes up when I say, so-and-so has a good chance with this recruit. I don't know how else to do it. I don't know what else to tell you, because I cannot tell you that the kid is coming to Purdue, because I don't know if he is or not. And that's the case with all of these guys. All that matters is what matters when it matters most. And that is on the day they decide. And, as I always say, the two most volatile commodities on this planet are enriched uranium and the teenage male. And you don't know what's going to happen. All you can do is report, find out, and try to report and tell you what's going on each step of the way. That doesn't guarantee anything. People like to say, well, you told us Purdue was in a good shot with this kid and he went here. Yes, true. Everything, though, that was said, I like to believe before that decision was accurate. And if you want to say, well, he didn't go to Purdue, so all of that stuff was wrong, that is the equivalent of saying Purdue lost to Virginia. So when you said that they were up by X number of points with however many seconds to go, that was wrong. No, the outcome doesn't mean every step of the way was wrong. Anyway, that's my own little personal rant. I apologize for that. Hunter Dickinson, obviously, is the guy Purdue has wanted throughout the entirety of this process. I've been saying this for weeks because close is relative, but I think the end of the line is probably nearing in terms of when he's going to decide. I would imagine it'll happen here in at least a few weeks. But he's probably on the clock now because, as I said, he is the Florida State visit could have been his last visit. As of the report this morning about him making a return official visit to Purdue in October, it's my understanding his tweet has since been deleted. I cannot corroborate that. I can tell you that if he's making a return visit anywhere to any of the schools that he already visited as a junior, then it would be news to those schools. So I don't know if there was a misunderstanding. I don't know what happened, but I cannot confirm or report or whatever that Hunter Dickinson is making a return official visit to Purdue. I can tell you that Purdue is going out there early this week to make a return visit to see him. So I don't know if there was any sort of misunderstanding between those two things. I have no idea. And I'm not in the business of diagnosing other people's reporting. Just try to find out what I can find out and go from there. So that's what I know about Hunter Dickinson. How he relates to the other big men on Purdue's board. I guess there's only one left now because Ben Carlson committed last week to Wisconsin. Ryan Kalkbrenner, I wouldn't say he's out. The last question there from Lloyd Braun. I wouldn't say he's out, but I wouldn't say he's in either. He's been seemingly close to deciding for a while now, and obviously has not. I've seen the predictions out there that he might be going to Creighton. Very possible. Very possible. I don't know what's real here in terms of, the priority list for Purdue, in my opinion, and it's an educated opinion, is Hunter Dickinson, Ryan Kalkbrenner, and then it would have been Ben Carlson. I do believe Purdue would have taken whoever committed first. I do believe that, but I have gotten a lot of different indications on that front as well. The thing about Creighton with Ryan Kalkbrenner, they must have done a remarkable job recruiting him, because it doesn't seem to make all that much sense on the surface. I'm also not in the business of judging other people's decisions, but it also goes to show you just the unpredictability of recruiting, and just what seems to be real, how often it can not be real when it matters the most. For Ryan Kalkbrenner, obviously a 4.0 student who's talked about doing engineering, and believe me, I'm not so naive to think that every kid who says he wants to study engineering is absolutely positively going to do that, because that's a hard thing to do. But also, you would expect a kid who is dead set on studying engineering to go to a school with an engineering program, which Creighton does not have one. So that would be a little bit of a curveball, I think, in terms of some of the criteria Kalkbrenner himself sort of laid out. Not that he necessarily committed himself to those criteria in terms of things he absolutely positively had to have in a school, but I think as things get closer with Dickinson in terms of his decision, I think it probably becomes a little bit less likely, Kalkbrenner winds up at Purdue. It would have been real interesting, because I think the Kansas offer sort of bought everybody time with him also. I think he was about to decide there, and I don't know what would have happened had the Kansas offer not come in and kind of given him more to think about for a couple of days. But I think that had that Kansas offer not come in, he'd be committed somewhere right now, whether that would be Purdue, whether that be Stanford, whether that be Creighton. I don't know, but I think he would have been committed by now. What Purdue would have done had Ryan Kalkbrenner called up to commit right before, theoretically Hunter Dickinson might be deciding, my guess is they probably would have taken his commitment. But I can't say anything for certain. I don't get paid $3 million a year to make those decisions. And as much as I'd like to make $3 million a year, I am glad that I don't have to make those decisions. So that's a lot of words that really told you nothing. But I think if I were you, the person I'd have my attention directed toward would obviously be Hunter Dickinson, because I think that of the two, I think he is the likelier of the two to come to Purdue right now. That being said, that could completely all go on its side tomorrow. If Ryan Kalkbrenner called this weekend to commit to Purdue, that I wouldn't rule that out. I wouldn't rule out anything. Purdue has had live offers out to these two guys forever. Now, if you feel like you're close to Hunter Dickinson and Kalkbrenner calls you, it's a dangerous game to play, man. It's a dangerous game to play, to turn away a really, really good player who you really, really like to chase somebody for which there are no guarantees. Purdue would have to feel supremely confident in Hunter Dickinson to do anything other than take Ryan Kalkbrenner's commitment should he call to offer one. That's simply me speculating. That's simply me assessing the situation the best I can. Again, I don't get paid $3 million to come up with answers to these questions. There might not be an answer to that question yet. It might come down to what happens in the heat of the moment. Let's say Matt Painter gets a phone call from one or the other to commit. He might have to decide then and there what he's going to do. I don't know his process with situations like this. I also know, but I do know that the pragmatic side of him has always been, don't turn down a good player for an unknown. So again, I really have no idea what he would do. There was a question about the likelihood of Purdue getting neither. That's always a possibility, always a possibility. For all we're talking about with Hunter Dickinson, potentially being close to a decision, should a decision come, things might look favorable for Purdue. We're talking about a kid who was on somebody else's campus this morning. So that's obviously cause for concern. He has taken other visits. He has lots of good schools recruiting him. This is a national recruit. This is a kid with great options who can go to a lot of really good places. So it's always possible that, things can go sideways on you at the last second with a kid. That being said, again, there are no guarantees with this kid. So when I say things go sideways at the last second, sounds like it's assuming that, you're in this great position. All I know is that everything I've been told, everything I've seen, everything I've observed is really positive for Purdue with Hunter Dickinson. That doesn't mean they're getting him. It just means everything is really positive with him. But you never know what you don't know, too. So anybody who covers recruiting who thinks they know everything is a damn liar, because you never know. You never know what's going to happen. So that's why we try to kind of couch things a little bit in the unknown, to account for, what we don't know. So that's pretty much everything I know right now about Hunter Dickinson and Ryan Kalkbrenner. If there's any other questions, by all means, get them in this cool little right-hand column here. Let's see here. There was a question on our message boards about injuries for football, Purdue football. We will ask Jeff Brom, obviously, tomorrow at his Monday press conference, now that game week normalcy is back. The bye week is over. I can't really add anything. I have no idea, but we will ask at the press conference tomorrow, obviously. All of these questions are about Hunter Dickinson. Imagine that. Are you able to elaborate on the positive with Hunter Dickinson? Sure. I don't know if it's anything revelatory. It's, Purdue has played a certain way with certain players before, Isaac Haas, A.J. Hammonds being those players. And that's how, it would play with Hunter Dickinson. And it has a demonstrated track record of playing the way I think anybody who gets Hunter Dickinson will need to play to get the very best out of him, to maximize his value as a player. Slow it down a little bit in the half court, give him lots of post ups, let him score down low, let him make decisions, let him be the guy you run your offense through, because he's an elite passer who can play all over the floor in the half court. I do think that, Purdue, that's part of what I said before, that Purdue makes more sense for him than just about anybody else because of that reason, because they've done it before. They have track record to show him that, and just, on top of kind of the sheer practicality of it all, I think Purdue has done a great job recruiting him. I think Painter has a great relationship. I think Brandon Brantley has done an unbelievable job recruiting him, and that stuff matters. And, I've kind of said this before generally. I think, Matt Painter's at that point in his career at Purdue where so many people have come to kind of understand what he's all about over the past 15 years or whatever it might be. I think he's starting to get a bump for that. The respect he's kind of gotten out there is starting to be weaponized a little bit in recruiting, and I think that's part of the reason you're seeing Purdue have some real success in recruiting. Now, that success in recruiting to this point, obviously Jaden Ivey and Ethan Morton are two really, really good gets, but where Purdue is in recruiting right now, I think they're in a really good spot with the 2021 class, on top of, obviously having some good remaining options too in 2020. I think that, Purdue is in a really good place in recruiting right now. And I think part of that is simply the fact that Purdue is cooler than it's been, for a lot of reasons. A lot of what the athletic department has done here the last couple of years has really taken this place to a different sort of level in the court of public perception. Going to the Elite Eight never hurts. Sustained success never hurts. Purdue's won national titles. Purdue's had players people know, Caleb Swanigan before Carson Edwards, but also guys like, guys like Vince Edwards, Dakota Mathias, lots of good players, perhaps not the household names nationally, Caleb Swanigan and Carson Edwards were, but people sort of know what Purdue is all about these days, and people respect Purdue. And where that matters more is not just in the kid or the parent, but the people around him. When the high school coach is impressed when Purdue calls and doesn't say, okay, Purdue's offering you now let's see if we can go get Michigan or Michigan State or Indiana or whoever. When the high school coach, the AAU people say Purdue's a damn good place to go, that's a really, really important part of recruiting. It's not just winning over the kid, it's winning over the people around them, and those people understanding that, hey, Purdue's a pretty damn good place to go, and then handling their communications with the player himself accordingly. So I think Purdue's just in a really good place in recruiting right now. What was your question again? I have no idea. I started talking about some sort of corollary issue to Hunter. Oh, the positives with Hunter Dickinson. One, Purdue's just in a good place right now. Makes all the basketball sense in the world. I think he has a great relationship with Matt Painter and Brandon Brantley, and that's it. But that's a pretty good list. I mean, that's three pretty strong draws there. I think Purdue's big man reputation has really mattered with some of these big men who've come up here the last couple of years, and I think Hunter Dickinson, if Purdue gets him, would be the one where it breaks through. And the thing about getting good big guys is when you get one and he's good, that helps you get the next one. And if Purdue is so fortunate as to get Hunter Dickinson, well, just getting Hunter Dickinson helps you get the next guy after him. And Purdue has a pretty good thing going there too, I think. From A.J. Hammond's helped Purdue get Isaac Haas. Isaac Haas, in a roundabout way, helped Purdue get Caleb Swanigan. Obviously Matt Harms wasn't the highest rated recruit in the world. Example A of this being the most inexact sciences, but also, Caleb Swanigan and the whole big man reputation helped Purdue get Travion Williams. Now the whole lineage of them has Purdue probably at the doorstep of potentially getting a national recruit in Hunter Dickinson, but it will, of course, we'll see how this plays out. What's your prediction for the Minnesota game? Don't know if I have one yet. I want to see who's playing for Purdue. I know that's a cop-out of an answer, but in my opinion, the TCU game plays out very differently if Purdue just has Elijah Sindelar. We talked about this last Sunday, but if Purdue has Sindelar, I think they throw the ball 75 times. They score, they get a bunch of yards. The defense is better because it's not on the field as much. I think that just changes the entire complexion of that game. I'm not necessarily saying Purdue beats TCU because I do think TCU was well built to play to Purdue's vulnerabilities, but I think that game would have played out very differently. So I'd like to know whether or not Purdue is going to have Elijah Sindelar before I offer any sort of prediction. I don't think Minnesota is great. I think they're supposed to be pretty good at the line of scrimmage. I watched them play the game early in the season. They almost got beat by Georgia Southern, I think. But I still think Purdue can beat some people. I think if you have your offense, if you have all your pieces from an offensive perspective, I think you could beat some people. And I don't know what would have to happen for me to change that opinion. I know the defense has taken some hits. I know the defense has worn down in 2 of the last 3 games, taking the hits in terms of losing Marcus Bailey and whatnot, and wearing down from here on out. That concern probably one does not help with the other. But I do think from an offensive perspective, Purdue's going to be able to outscore some people when it has all of its pieces in place. The offensive line, we talk a lot about the offensive line. It is what it is. Purdue's just going to have to work around it. But I think Purdue was good enough in the first game against Nevada on the road to score 40 in its opener. It didn't, obviously, because of a couple of bad turnovers, a couple of missed opportunities. And then Purdue scored 42, right? 42 against Vanderbilt. So Purdue has been productive offensively on the scoreboard with the line of scrimmage being what it is. So Purdue, that's going to be its reality. It's just going to have to wing it around. The deep drops might not be something you do traditionally. You're going to have to manufacture some big plays. You're going to have to manufacture a running game. You're going to have to manufacture some balance, whatever it may be. Nothing new. Again, this is not all that uncommon relative to the past 2 years that with the teams Jeff Brom has been able to win enough with to this point. So nothing outside the realm of familiarity here. So I don't really have an opinion on the Minnesota game, but I would like Purdue's chances at home, provided they have all their players. What's your that one? Any chance Christie would commit early somewhere, or does he want to play it out? I assume that's Max Christie. Yeah. I have no idea. I don't know what his time frame is. He's going to officially visit, or he was going to officially visit Purdue in October. A USA basketball conflict came up, as they tend to do. I know he's coming to the Texas game unofficially, but I would imagine he'll reschedule that official visit. Duke is a big one. Duke is where it's my opinion, Duke was the place he wanted to go. Does that end it? No, of course it doesn't end it. First off, the possibility is always very real that, Duke can get other guys. And Duke doesn't make as much sense when push comes to shove as all of the heartfelts that come with getting that offer, as Les Miles would say at his introductory press conference at Kansas. That might be the visceral decision. That might be the emotional decision. That might be the quote unquote dream school. But again, when you take practicality into things, it can change a lot. And I think Purdue's got a great relationship with the kid. I think he can be an impact guy at Purdue right away. Whereas, when you go to a Duke, you worry about what came in front of you, and then you worry what's going to come in on top of you, either in your same class or coming up behind you. Because when you go to places like that, and you're always at risk of Tracy McGrady or somebody like that getting recruited right on top of you, and then all of a sudden you are coming off the bench, which there's nothing wrong with coming off the bench on a good team. But when you're a certain level of recruit where you can credibly say, I'm going to be in college for this long. And I don't think Max Christie looks at himself that way. I think he's the most down to earth number 10 player in the country I've probably ever seen. But that sort of thing also plays into Purdue's hands too. He's a Purdue sort of kid. And when I say that, I'm not saying he's not a Duke sort of kid. I'm saying he's not a one and done sort of mentality type of guy where you go to Duke to get paid eventually. Eventually, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't write him off just because of the Duke offer. I do think that was a big one. I do think that was the one kind of he wanted, but I would not suggest that one's over by any stretch of the imagination. So let me move on here, take a couple of more here. We'll go till 9:45 since I was late. It's 9:45 right now. Who cares? What the hell do I have to do tonight? Do you get to cover the Navy SEAL training the B-ball team is going through? No. I stained my fence this weekend. My father-in-law stained my fence. That was my Navy SEAL training. And if anybody has any recommendations on getting stain out of your cuticles, please let me know. No, I did not get to cover that, nor did I ask to. So not really sure what I would have done. Stand there and watch, I guess. But what we'll do is I'm sure when we have access to the players here on Wednesday after their first practice, we'll ask some questions about what that meant to them. And if Purdue goes on to have the sort of season I'm sure Purdue hopes to have, I'm sure a few of us will go back and attribute it all to that. So we will try to get some insight on that when we can. But no, we did not get to cover it. Lack of a run D versus TCU was worrisome. Disappointed with defensive staff's ability to adjust while we were getting gashed in the second half. What does the defensive coaching staff need to do to limit the Gopher rushing attack? I think Purdue has a bunch of freshmen playing on its defensive line, and they're down their best linebacker, and they were on the field too much. And I think that's a bad combination. As I mentioned before, the defense 2 out of 3 weeks has really kind of worn down as the game has gone on. I think TCU was well designed to take advantage of that because their physical running game. Is Purdue the biggest, strongest, most physical, oldest defense in college football? No. They have a lot of talent, but George Karlaftis is a freshman. Branson Dean, who's out there, is a freshman. Lawrence Johnson out there is a redshirt freshman, as is Branson Dean. I forgot to denote him as a redshirt freshman. Derek Barnes is a linebacker a year ago. Who am I forgetting? Anthony Watts has played a lot, so I can't include him. Anyway, that's the bulk of their defensive line, and that's you don't have the age and experience out there. You prefer to have the line of scrimmage. Your linebackers, obviously Ben Holt is an older guy. Marcus Bailey is out. Cornell Jones has played enough. He can be inconsistent a little bit. I think your front seven just isn't ideally suited at this stage for that style of football. Now, can you win with that personnel? Absolutely, you can win with that personnel. Is it a real problem when you're on the field too much? When the special teams and offense turn it over 5 times at Nevada, or can't get much going offensively against TCU? Yes, that's a real problem. When you throw in the fact that TCU had a very physical running game, I think a lot went into what you saw at TCU. I don't think that defense is as bad as perhaps it was made to look at times. The tackling, I think is something obviously they're going to want to get better at. Again, you've got some freshmen out there. You've got Jalen Graham playing as a true freshman. He was a quarterback last year in Detroit. You got a lot of youth out there. You got a lot of guys who just aren't physically there quite yet. But we've been talking about this since the end of last season, since signing day, that Purdue's reality this season was they were going to have to play through some youth. They were going to have to play through some mistakes. They're going to have to play through some physical disadvantages because their most talented players are their youngest players, and it's just going to be a process here. Do guys get bigger and stronger during the season? No. Do they get better during the season? They certainly can. I mean, there's a good amount of history, I'd imagine, of freshmen being significantly better at the end of the season as they are, at the start of the season. So that's kind of Purdue's best bet. From a systematic standpoint, I don't really know what Purdue can do. I think they're going to be playing a lot of nickel this year, in part because of spread offenses, but in part because you're down Marcus Bailey, and he would be on the field every single snap for you most likely. So when you run nickel, that naturally takes body out of the box and makes you a little bit more vulnerable up front. So from a systematic standpoint, I'm not really sure there's anything you can kind of put your finger on. I think Purdue has wanted to be more aggressive, and I think you saw some signs of added aggressiveness the last 2 weeks, but I don't know if there's any sort of panacea out there, any sort of button Purdue can push to just get much better from a defensive perspective. I think the offense has to help it, the special teams has to help it, and it just has to get better with as it gains experience. I enjoyed the weekly word concerning Nogel. Thank you. Can you elaborate on why you think he's going to take a step forward on the offensive end? He has to. Purdue needs people to score, and I think they didn't need him to score the last 2 years, but now I think you're going to scheme a little bit to get him more opportunities at the basket. You're going to perhaps post him up a little bit more, perhaps run him off more ball screens, able to get guys on his hip and get kind of downhill to the basket. He has to finish. I also just think that oftentimes when your best players become upperclassmen and they're empowered to do more, they tend to do more. I think he'll probably look to score a little bit more than he ever has before. The last couple of years, he didn't have to do anything offensively. All he had to do was rebound and defend, and he did it at an elite level in both categories and really made Purdue better. He's won Purdue basketball games as an offensive rebounder alone. And I'm talking about the Michigan game 2 years ago in Ann Arbor. He won that game for Purdue as an offensive rebounder because there were times where Purdue was struggling to score a little bit, and he came up with huge putbacks, and I don't think Purdue wins that game without him. But now I just think he's more empowered. He's more – you saw it at the end of the year even. I thought you saw him maybe putting the ball on the floor a little bit and trying to get to the basket a little bit more. Maybe that was the way people were defending him, which is to say they weren't defending him out on the perimeter. But I think that you saw a player who was more aggressive off the dribble, more aggressive trying to get to the basket. And I just think now, as you're looking for guys to score, I just think the opportunity is there for him to do that even more. So I think you're going to I just think that's going to kind of be the case. Purdue needs people to score, and your best players are Matt Harms and Nogel Eastern and Travion Williams. And I think that, and Aaron Wheeler, you need these guys to score more. That's natural. You lose a ton of shots between Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein, a ton of points. Somebody has to fill that sort of void. Not necessarily the same way, but somebody has to score. And I think your most experienced guys are the first guys you look to. We're going to take just a couple more here because I know you guys all have other stuff going on tonight. Do you feel the urge to punch Tom in the head when you finish writing the weekly word boiling over? No. Why would I punch Tom in the head? What did Tom ever do to you? Sorry. On that note, Betty with the awesome question. I don't know why I would punch Tom in the head. Tom, I'm sure, wants to punch me in the head. Alan, I'm sure, wants to punch me in the head every day. I'm sure he goes to bed at night dreaming about punching me in the head. But I have never, ever wished any harm on any of my coworkers. I don't know why I would ever, what I would possibly have against Tom that I would want to do that. So on that note, I'll sign off. I'm so sorry about the snafu earlier today. As I mentioned before, I don't prepare. I don't really do anything. And as I said, I posted this as a webcam instead of a stream. I have no idea how you can have a stream without a webcam, so I viewed them as redundant, and I think YouTube changed its page on me. I'm also not exactly Mr. YouTube here. I have no idea how to work this website, so I just kind of do whatever and just hope like hell it works. The first 3 weeks it worked. I got cocky, and I paid the price bad, and you all lost your 15 minutes because of it. I do appreciate you guys all kind of hanging in here with me. We have 70-some people here, and after you got blown off on the initial try at this, I appreciate you sticking with it. You've probably noticed we've started to monetize YouTube, where you get to watch a smart advertisement when you log on to these things. And I check those things just to kind of see what's going on. And last week's live chat, at last check, earned us a cool 14 cents. I'm certain I did something wrong in terms of the settings or whatever. But as of the last time I checked it, last week's chat session earned us 14 cents, which there's an old Married with Children where Al Bundy says that would be our tip at Denny's on Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. Anyway, hopefully the 14 cents can be put to good use. I certainly appreciate all of you taking part in this, even though I know where I stand now because I have an actual monetary value associated with it. But I certainly appreciate all of your enthusiasm toward this product. I know Sunday night is family time for a lot of you. A lot of you have to go to work. tomorrow. So I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come into your house, talk about Purdue, and probably scare your pets. In all seriousness, thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate it. We're going to cut this off now, and we will talk to you again next Sunday night. Take care.